Welcome to FMH Insurecast, a podcast created by Farmers Mutual Hail designed to deliver expertise and insights from trusted FMH team members and industry experts. Each new episode will dive into new products, industry updates, and innovative solutions. Let's get to today's topic.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to FMH Insurecast. I'm Dave DeCapp. Before I get into our main content today and bring on our guests, I'd like to explain why I've shown up looking maybe a little different than the last podcast. Not trying to beat Joe Rogan. One of FMH's most important charity events each year is supporting the St. Baldrick's Foundation, the largest private funder of childhood cancer research grants that has totaled over $369 million since 2005. So a significant funder of grants. At FMH, we're in our 21st year of support for this great organization. We've shaved over 450 heads, maybe 451 now, and approaching the $2 million mark in our donations here at FMH. So it's something we're very proud of, and I was happy to participate. So just wanted to put a plug in for that because it's such a great organization. So with that said, let's get to our main topic today, being June 17th, 2026. So every year around this time, final county yields begin to become available, giving us our first look at how area-based crop insurance products such as SCO and ECO, which is top of everyone's mind right now, how they performed across the country and payments go out subsequently, right? This year is particularly interesting because one outcome of OB3, you all remember from last year, was to increase the premium support for these products, making them more affordable for farmers and leading to significant higher participation during the 2026 sales season. And we'll talk about that with our guests here coming up. We'll talk about also where payments are being triggered, what factors are driving those outcomes from different areas of the country, and what we're hearing from, most importantly, from agents and farmers as these products continue to gain momentum. And it'll be no surprise that the momentum will continue into 2027, definitely, because there are some changes, continued changes coming. To help us break all this down, I'm joined by three guests who work closely with agents and producers across different regions of the country. We've got Andrew Sather. I'll let Andrew introduce himself. Tim McElroy and Dave Colley. And so let's start with you, Andrew. Can you introduce yourself? Talk about your role, how many times you've now been on the podcast, kind of the area you cover.
Well, hello, everyone. My name's Andrew Sather. I live in Moorhead, Minnesota. The sales manager for FMH. I cover the northern parts of Minnesota, also North Dakota. In addition to FMH, I am also part of a family farm. So the topic of SCO and ECO is also a personal interest of mine as it relates to my own farm operation. And this is my third appearance on FMH Insurecast. And thanks again for having me on the show.
You betcha. Old pro. Now from old pro to new meat. Tim, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners and talk a little bit about what you do here.
Yeah, hi, everybody. I'm Tim McElroy. Like Dave said, first time on the podcast. Happy to be here. I'm the sales manager for Western Kansas, Western Oklahoma, and for the state of Colorado. Like I said, I live in Waukene, Kansas, and I've been with FMH for 4.5 years now.
Yes, sir. Thanks for being on, Tim. Appreciate it. Now to more new meat, Mr. Dave Colley. Dave, tell us a little about yourself.
Hey, thanks for that, Dave. Yeah, this is definitely my first one here, so thanks for the opportunity. No, I'm Dave Colley, the AVP and Regional Sales Manager for the East Region for FMH. And that East Region, if you just kind of started up at Michigan, went down through Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, caught the boot heel of Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, and go east. That's the East Region for Farmers Mutual Hail. So a lot of diversification in different areas there. Yes. I started with John Deere crop insurance actually 19 years ago. Came to Farmers Mutual Hail in 2015. I grew up on a farm outside of Lima, Ohio, which is where I live today. There, my brothers still farm, Colley Brothers. They're in Spencerville, Ohio, and so I don't get over there and help as much as I used to, but do still hang around there once in a while. So looking forward to this, Dave, and talking about ECO and SCO today.
Absolutely. The hottest topic in the land right now, especially right now, yeah?
Yes, sir.
I know why we're here today. Why this conversation is timely. Let's talk about, Andrew, the importance of the products themselves. How do they fit inside of a risk management strategy from an individual grower standpoint?
Yeah, from a producer standpoint, I think the best way to view area plans like SCO and ECO is to think of them as a price hedge. Use them as a tool to help mitigate your price risk, because price risk is something that affects every farmer and affects every farmer, a great deal. And it's something that you can't control. So if you kind of change your mentality of what these products are and use them as a tool to help mitigate your price risk, tie it into your grain marketing with forward sales or option strategies, so on and so forth, it becomes a great piece of your overall grain risk management strategy.
To piggyback on that, Andrew, with the uncertainty in the industry right now, an ever-changing industry, it's more important now than ever to look at what those input costs are and try to find a way just to break even. It's in Western Kansas, Eastern Colorado, where I live, it's getting really tough to break even. So they're starting to look at other ways to cover their crops. Maybe not just that underlying revenue protection plan. Maybe it's not just going up a level. Maybe you've got to take a look at some of these supplemental plans like SCO or ECO.
Yeah, and when you do that, you're adding dollars to your bottom line that gives you a better total package of protection.
Yeah. That additional coverage availability is there, and it's become more important, or not more available, I guess, and more practical, if you will, to fit into their budgets due to the One Big Beautiful Bill and the increased premium support make ECO and SCO both very viable options to give them that additional coverage. And I don't want them to miss the fact, what Andrew talked about is super important, and I'm a big believer in that. But yield can also be protected if they trend with the county. We talk about that, and how does that producer trend with the county? So even the yield side can give them a little bit of protection because if their yields are down and if they trend with the county, then the county yield will most likely be down, so they aren't totally losing it by going to a county plan versus individual. They just got to look at their operation, put a plug in for our FMHQ and the tools to help them do that, and determine if it can help them fill that need there that they might have.
Thanks, guys. Those are all great points. That's why we're looking at 25 right now. We got to fit it into the holistic picture moving into 26 and 27. So Dave, since you have such a large geography that you're covering, maybe we'll start with you. Can you talk a little bit about any the national kind of factors, right? So you got price and yields and other factors that impact this. But can you talk about how that's kind of impacted the broad region that you cover, and maybe some surprises you've seen?
Yeah, sure. I think start with where losses came in. And a lot of people were excited this year to see once, the Dare County's trigger. Well, why is that? We had essentially record corn yields last year and also bean yields across the United States. So when you look at that, you think, well, there may not be too many areas triggering. Well, we also saw the corn price drop, about just over 10%. I think it came in at 10.2, and beans were down a little bit, but not anything like the corn price. So when you take those into account, the actual indemnities paid in 2025 were about $758 million. Big number, right? And double what it was in 24. So you might think, oh gosh, that's a big payout, and it's worse than 24. But from a loss ratio perspective, we're currently running at 39% for the industry compared to 84% in 2024. So we just saw that big increase, Dave, and you alluded to it, right? Due to the premium support increase from 24 to 25, went up to 65%. And the adoption, I think we were somewhere around 330% increase in ECO and SCO. Well, that's just actually ECO premium from 24 to 25. So huge increase there. driving a lot more dollars getting paid out. And that's where there are a lot of people interested in seeing when they saw that corn price dropping, does this plan going to work? So you certainly see some differences in different areas, because where we had these record yields, it's not as much. The yield will offset that price drop a little bit there. And when you get around the fringes where there's more variability, you're seeing more payouts in areas where there's a little bit more variable. And I can talk a little bit about, Western Kentucky, Tennessee, the Southern Ohio, Southern Illinois areas where that's where we saw a lot of these big payouts, Dave, here this year for the industry.
Yeah, actually, that was the question I was going to go to. A quick follow-up, and then we'll move on to commentary from the other regions. So where did you see the biggest impact, or maybe even the biggest surprise as far as, how the products performed?
Yeah. Dave, when I really look at it, there weren't a lot of surprises, at least that I've heard about from agents or that I saw. We knew, for example, Kentucky last year and Tennessee. Tough, wet spring, some dry weather. Kind of expected that they're probably going to trigger this year. And then when that corn price dropped, they had soybeans really popped in those areas due to that wet spring, and then some, turning dry later. So not a lot of big surprises in my area. I think it's the expected yields. Always the big question is, how's that final yield coming out compared to what my expected yield was, right? And the expected yields overall, when I talk to agents across the country, is they came in they're pretty well in line. Yep, they can find areas where maybe they feel like it's not quite right, but really it's RMA, I feel like, has done a good job with their current formula or whatever they're using to set those. And the final yields are, I don't think there were big surprises there. Not big anyway. You get down, any individual farmer is going to be like, well, this thing didn't work, or this agent might feel like his counties or her counties didn't trigger right. So, but I think overall there's not a lot of surprises.
So with that kind of as a foundation, Andrew, let's move to you. So would you agree kind of with that sentiment, or were things significantly different in your area of the country?
No, I definitely agree with what Dave just mentioned. And I think if I were surprised, it's more so of a affirmation of what the surprise was. And what I mean by that is there are so many counties, I'm talking here about corn, that I'm in the region of, and they're outgrowing the county expected yield by 20 or 30 or 40 bushels per acre. And I think it's just more of an affirmation of, it seems like the Corn Belt continues to trend farther north every single year. And the ECO and SCO yields that were just released last week kind of proves that, kind of shows some evidence of that.
Yeah. Excellent point. So staying with Andrew, the were there like the adoption trends year over year? So I would imagine, and this is a pure guess, I haven't looked into the numbers, but I imagine the adoption that Dave had talked about has kind of happened there as well, right?
Yeah, it certainly has. SCO and ECO very popular here in 2026, and as it was alluded to earlier, the premium support changes, changing that subsidy or the premium support rate up to 80%, that makes a huge difference on the popularity of these products. And the other part related to the SCO is the change with the county ARC program. In the past, in prior years, county ARC and SCO were not compatible. It was a one or the other choice, and that was removed here for 2026. So that led to additional adoption of SCO enrollment as well in 2026.
Gotcha. Yeah, important point. And we've talked about that a few times on the Insurecast, but that's an important one to keep in mind as well. Tim, how about let's move to your area of the world?
Yeah, I'd kind of echo what Dave was saying. ECO, SCO is always a big part of the conversation, maybe more so in Kansas than it was in Colorado and Western Oklahoma. But, in 2025, when we did get that premium support increase up to 65%, we saw a lot of ECO plans written out there. In fact, I think I jumped by about 60% on policy count. Then we got the big, beautiful bill. Premium support jumped to 80%. I jumped by another 50% on policy count. So it's a huge conversation out there, one that's going to continue to happen, I think, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and we'll get to looking forward in a minute, but that's 27 is going to be an equally interesting conversation, isn't it?
Yes.
So a couple other things I wanted to talk about. We've kind of already covered, like are there any major weather events impacting that? Any certain growing conditions? I think you guys covered that pretty well. The one thing I'm kind of curious on, just listening to you guys and just being involved from my part of the world, is the domination of the conversation. So leading up to sales close, how much of your conversation was around this, around understanding this, making sure agents were up to speed and talking to them about how they're going to approach the selling process this year? And that was it dominated by that, or was it kind of, hey, this is something we're just going to deal with. It's going to be a significant adoption increase, but folks are pretty much they know what they're going to do. And let's start with Mr. Colley.
Yeah, Dave. It was a exciting year. Once again, we talked about the change from the OBBB there going this year, or from 24 to 25, and then from 25 to 26. Now we're up to an 80% premium support. So you can still take ARC as well as SCO now.
Right.
So we saw this huge increase in 26 of SCO policies purchased. There was a little bit of an increase the year before, nothing like ECO, but this year, Dave, I've got us going up about 364% in ECO from 25 to 26. We don't know, we don't know acres and premiums yet, because acres aren't all, of course, all in, and acreage reports aren't all in yet. But man, that's a huge increase. And then you got SCO coming in at you would say just 130%, but that's on top of 360% the year before. In 2 years, ECO policies sold, Dave, have went up 900%. I mean, that's 10 times.
Yeah.
In 2 years. That's the kind of adoption. So how did they go about it? I think was part of your question. Tim and Andrew would be much better at talking about this, but our tools in FMHQ, I just put a quick shout out to that, because it just helped them show the farmers how this product can work for them, because it doesn't always work in every county, in every area.
Right.
There were some areas we still haven't had the adoption that maybe we think we would. Part of that, and I'm not talking about my area, when you get along the coast, because you have HIP-WE, and you can't buy HIP-WE and ECO. Okay, so you still can't do that. Right. So a lot of them are sticking with the HIP-WE product. But ECO has proven that it works over there. I think if they take a look this year at how it triggered and paid out, it can be a very viable product for those areas as well. So, yeah, that between FMHQ showing the farmers, I think, how it works, showing agents how to use that tool, and again, I'd let Tim or Andrew; they were much closer to this than me. But yeah, it is exciting season this year, I think, for our agents.
And that's kind of where I was leading the witness to, is like, how much of the conversation was difficult versus approaching more options. So to Dave's point, Tim and Andrew both, related to the tools that we have at FMH, shameless plug, right? We feel like we've got some great tools. And can you talk a little bit about that interaction and dynamic?
Yeah, I think the ECO conversation, that was topic number one with a bullet here for 2026 sales season. We alluded to what the changes were, and they were substantial, but then using the FMH tools as an educational point to our agents to then relate to our insureds, or to present to our insureds at our farmer meetings and our educational events. It really was the defining topic of the 2026 sales season.
Agree with that one, Tim?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. And back to your original question, I felt like it was part of 100% of the conversations, if I'm being honest. We kind of took the approach at FMH as we want to be viewed as the industry leaders, the most knowledgeable AIP out there when it came to everything that came out of that big, beautiful bill, specifically those changes to ECO and SCO. So to Andrew's point, the tools that we have available within FMHQ, the comparison charts, it gave producers that visual, and not just producers, but agents who maybe have never sold the product before, gave them that visual, that confidence to be able to explain to the producers how these different programs work.
Yeah, that's That's interesting because dominate. So the significant, and this is really where my original question was kind of pointing to, because there's so many changes, and there always is, right? There's always a lot to talk about every single year. But it seemed like this most recent year with OB3 and all the other changes that have gone on, folks could get potentially confused, potentially misunderstand a little bit. And I know with all the efforts that you guys put together, plus the tools we feel very important that we're keeping up with the methodology and the ability to be able to do the appropriate analysis of anything new changing. It's something that I know that our agents have appreciated. I could say that from many of the personal conversations I've had. Plus, the more you understand it, the more you're talking about the actual options that are going to benefit your risk management program versus, what does this mean? How does this interact? And that type of stuff, and doing a bunch of back of the napkin kind of computations. So it sounds like you guys would agree with that, right?
100%.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe I'll take just a quick step back. As far as, we're not trying to make this a training or anything, but whoever wants to take it, just, make sure everyone's on the same page with what actually triggers a payment. What does it take for things to happen? Dave kind of started a little bit with this, but when you're doing the evaluation, what is it you're really looking at to see whether or not a payment is going to be triggered or not triggered?
So your ECO, that's covering those shallow losses. That's your enhanced coverage option. That's covering from either a 95% level down to your SCO level of 86% or a 90% level down to that 86, depending on which band you choose there. And then your supplemental coverage option, the SCO, it's covering from that 86% level down to your underlying coverage level for your MPCI policy, whether that's a 75% level or an 80%, it would cover that gap up to 86%. Once those final yields and final revenue has been calculated, we're going to compare that off the expected yield and expected revenue for that county, for that crop. And then we're going to see where those losses, ended up.
And just maybe to add a little bit more to that, is that enhanced coverage option. It's an endorsement, as Tim said, but it's based on the county, instead of your individual. So, like you said, Dave, going back, one of the reasons maybe in the past too, a lot of farmers weren't always big on taking a county plan. They wanted individual coverage. What we're seeing today is that these county plans can work and give them protection. Tim talked about that 95% trigger. That's right up there, right? So you can get that very top end coverage. Yeah, it's on a county basis, but if you tend to trend with the county, that farmer trends his yields and production trends with the county, even if it's higher than the county, but generally trends with it, this plan can work for them because it can give them that price protection as long as they're buying an RP, revenue protection plan, and then ECO's revenue protection as well. So it gives them some downside price protection in addition to that expected yield. So that county expected yield. So I think they're starting to see, and they see this year, we talked about were there any surprises. I think most of them could, if they didn't get paid, felt like they probably had good yields. And even though the price might have been down, their yield offset it, So I think they're feeling like it can work for them.
So that's good. I appreciate that. And that where I was leading to with the basic conversation is contiguous counties, right? Because I'm curious from each of your regions, a lot of farmers farm across counties. Agents certainly work in multiple counties. What kind of conversations have you had related to expected or final yields in one county versus how it worked in literally the county next door?
Yeah, it's important to note that, the county's expected yield and also the final yield, once we determine that, that's going to be true to that individual county. So you may farm across county lines, you may have a policy in multiple different counties, but that county's expected yield and final yield will be for that county. It's not going to go across to your other county. We've mentioned before on this podcast too, but when you get into situations where you maybe have a less popular type of crop or a more unique type of crop, there may be many counties kind of pooled together to get a more true expected county yield. So that's important to understand that as well. That's not going to happen with corn and beans, but when you get to more unique type of things, that's a situation that can occur.
Yeah. Now, important point. You're right. We have talked about that before, but it bears repeating, right? That's important to consider when you're wondering how we come up with some of these numbers.
And I'll put another plug in there for FMH. We talked about how your farm does compared to, the county. How do you trend with the county yields? And we have tools in our FMHQ and our quoting software that allow you to see exactly how your yields have been doing, your individual yields compared to the county yields, Dave. And so it gives them that opportunity to see, well, do we trend with the county? And again, it doesn't maybe always work based on the expected yield in that county and how they do and how they trend. Maybe it's not the best option, and maybe they're better off going to the market and doing out forward pricing, hedging, etc. Or maybe they can use this product to help them. So all things for consideration.
Yeah, for sure. Tim, thoughts on this one?
Oh, I agree with both of what they're saying. I was just thinking as they were talking how I received a phone call yesterday from a producer up in a county just north of me who he was kind of asking, what was this payment I just got? Well, he had fabulous yields, way over his APH. Well, the rest of the county had gotten a little bit of hail, had some damage. Well, it dropped that county yield, that final yield down to where, he didn't have any losses, but the county still triggered payments. So just another reminder for these agents that it doesn't necessarily matter what you grow. Yeah.
Another key point to remember, because people tend to think the other way, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't grow what I normally grow, but the county did. So I don't, I'm kind of hit from both sides and in a disadvantageous position. Okay. So another follow up to the basic, what is ECO and SCO? So what is the, put you on the spot here, like for each of you, the most common misconception, and Tim may have outlined one of them right there, the common misconception with these area-based products, particularly these two, that people are hearing?
Well, I'll mention one, and this is a question that I had multiple times this past winter at some farmer meetings. And in the northern region, in the Prairie Protol region, prevent plant is always something that's in the back of people's mind. But if you have a prevent plant situation and you are taking out an SCO or ECO policy, those acres that are prevent plant are not going to be working on SCO and ECO. I mean, it drops off their policy on those acres. So there's no prevent plant coverage on that SCO or on those. There's no prevent plant coverage for those SCO and ECO acres.
Good point. Very good point. Yeah. And are you guys hearing some of the same? Would you agree with that, or would there be something else maybe in your region?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Another one that I get is still people forgetting that ARC has been decoupled from SCO. That's something that people are still getting used to. One other, as I mentioned before, it just doesn't pay for me. County plans don't pay just because I tend to trend with the county. But yeah, those are all good examples.
I think one other one might be, Dave, is the dollars of coverage that you get, because you might feel that you're a producer and you're always out producing the county. So maybe it won't work for you, right? But what they don't realize is that their individual APH does determine their dollars of coverage. So they are getting their dollars for the value. They're not using the county average to determine how many dollars of coverage. That's just determining when it's going to pay.
The trigger.
But the amount you get is based on your individual yield, which brings it back to them. So it does cover that fact that they outproduce. If they're 20 bushels higher than the county, say in corn, or 10 bushels higher in beans, they're getting those dollars of coverage. And I think sometimes that gets lost in translation a little bit.
Yeah. That an excellent point. It's the let me ask another question we can hit on briefly. So we're talking about area plans triggered by county final yields. Are there any supplemental products or plans that we offer at FMH that can come back to individualizing that? Not a shameless plug. This is about risk management strategies, right? Because we want to make sure that we provide options on the table.
Yep. And going back to your original question, one other thing right along the lines of that second question is having either optional units or enterprise units. If I've got optional units, producers think sometimes, well, I can't do that county-based plan. How is that going to work? Well, that's just not true. But yes, I mean, we do offer a supplemental plan called SCO Plus, and we offer a supplemental plan called ECO Plus. You have to buy either the SCO or the ECO to get those plus products, but essentially they're covering the exact same band, but it's covering on a unit by unit basis instead of lumping everything in the county together and being judged off that final yield.
And the great thing is with that, you get the higher of the two, right, Tim?
Yep.
I mean, it's, you're going to get paid if your individual loss is higher than the ECO payment amount, you're going to get that. If the ECO is the highest, then you're going to get the amount that's the ECO. So it really gives them, Tim brought it up perfect, is I still want some individual coverage. Well, you get ECO and add this to it, and you got a great product because you're going to get the higher of the two and being great, just a great risk protection package there.
Yeah, and that was I was leading the witnesses a little bit, but at the same time, I mean, the point in doing that is saying, one of the things that we do as much as possible is, and I mentioned providing the tools, and you guys have talked very well about how those are employed, but also provide the risk management options for our agents to be able to sell to the customers to make sure that they can have the options to have the best and most I call it worthwhile risk management program. Tim, let's start this next one with you. Looking forward, I want to talk a little bit about, obviously OB3 has many changes in it. Some of them, not all of them, have been executed yet. What are you looking for in your region, this dynamic of these products in particular, but also in general going forward into 2027, 2028? And tell us about some of the changes that are being made that would drive those decisions.
Yeah, I think it's still going to be all gas, no brakes when it comes to ECO, SCO. The big change coming out of the big, beautiful bill for 2027, obviously, is that SCO band. It's now going to go all the way up to 90% instead of that 86% trigger. So now your ECO band is only going to be from 95 down to 90%. So in most of my area, producers who were buying ECO were already buying SCO to go along with it. So I don't think anything changes. I think they will still buy both. I know in some areas that's going to be a whole nother story, but I do continue to see the growth of ECO and SCO in 27.
Yeah, I think more the same. I think if you are a policyholder and you carry SCO and ECO in your policy today, right now, I think that's going to continue in the future. And I think as there's more and more buzz, there's more and more talk about these products, I think the adoption, while we may not increase as much year over year as what Dave mentioned earlier, I think we will still see an increased number of sales going forward year over year.
And Dave, I agree with these two guys. I mean, the sales are going to continue to increase. With that change, the SCO going up to 90, I'm kind of interested to see, because will they still go the 95-90 band? It becomes narrower, only 5%, but you're still at 95, right? But I think they're definitely going to take that SCO at 90. With that premium support available for a lot of these guys, and if they're spread out through the county, farming across the county, that can work as good as a 85% enterprise unit, most likely, and with the premium support there, at least fill the gaps up a little bit down to, from 90 to 95, or I think you're going to see a lot of 90-80 SCO bands. So the number of SCO policies will jump, but I think a lot of them are going to keep ECO probably where it's at, where they're at. I don't know if we'll add a lot of ECO. I think the big increase will be that SCO will really jump up and have a much higher adoption even this year because of that change.
Yeah, and you kind of hit where I was going with that too, is because obviously budgets are tight. We have obviously we don't need to get into the entire ag economy, but we know what the market looks like as of today here in mid-June 2026. But there's only so much protection you can afford, or so much you can buy. So my other question is, and this is, you can't look in your crystal ball, you can make some estimates, but given all these changes, can you continue to buy more and more, or where where is that, kind of that magic threshold of this is sufficient protection for my operation?
Well, I think the answer to that is, you got to understand what your own numbers are and where your true costs are, get that established, and then, evaluate your policy and determine where your liability dollars, where are you meeting that gap? And what we've seen over the last couple of years is SCO and ECO have been an important piece of that risk management decision to add more dollars to your liability to give you better risk protection. And when you can tie it into your marketing and your grain marketing plan, it gives you a really solid risk protection tool that you have in your pocket.
I was just going to kind of piggyback on what both of you said. My area is maybe a little bit different where we deal with so much hail out here. So a big discussion is, do I buy that extra hail coverage or am I buying the ECO, SCO? Well, shameless plug for FMHQ. Some of these comparison tools we have, I can compare those side by side. That producer might say, this is what I have to spend per acre. Well, I can narrow it down and say, well, these are your options. And sometimes it's a combination of both those ECO, SCO, and hail, but sometimes you're having to make that tough decision of which one makes more sense for my operation. But we have the tools to help show them.
Yeah, and I'd just add to that a little bit. I think Tim's right on it, that encourage you, if you're a farmer listening to this, to get with your Farmers Mutual Hail agent. And if you don't have a Farmers Mutual agent, maybe go find one, because that FMHQ tool can help them, help you identify what's the best package for you. And they can do that relatively fast. It's actually very fast. They can compare whatever options you want to figure out the most efficient and effective cost for you to get the kind of coverage and risk protection package you want, and address your concerns. Are you concerned about yield? Are you concerned about spot yields? Are you just concerned about your whole enterprise? Are you concerned about price, or what are you doing to help protect price? Are there tools? And credit the multi-peril crop insurance industry right now. There's, with these endorsements and some private products that we just alluded to a little bit earlier, you can put together some very good risk protection packages, I think, to meet your needs.
That's a great comment, and I don't want to end there, but we are kind of, I'll say, winding down on the kind of the areas that I wanted to explore with you guys. What did we miss? Is there anything we missed, particularly that applies to each of your areas of the world?
I don't think so, Dave. The only I alluded to it earlier, but just want to say I don't know about cotton yet. I'm going to go back to Southeast and down through the Delta and whatnot. But we did, and I didn't comment on this earlier, but we did see a shift a little bit. We're seeing a shift from stacks to ECO over the last couple of years. With that increase, because stacks has always been at 80% premium support, and now ECO is there. So it makes sense because that has a 95% trigger instead of the 90. So we have seen some of that. And cotton yields are always come out a little bit later because they're waiting for the gins to get all the records and turn in all the production. So that can actually go till July 15th till we see the final cotton yields. And that's why we didn't talk about cotton folks earlier. So, but I just want to throw that in there and make sure they didn't think we skipped cotton down there.
In the north here, when we have a lot of small grains, we have a lot of canola. It's important to note that those final yields were actually released a month ago in May. So a lot of our producers that had those crops, had those policies in 2025, those payments have already been made here in May. And it's just the row crops, the corn and the beans, that were released just this past week.
Yeah, and I'd just give one final shout out on ECO and SCO. Don't jump in and out of these kind of programs. Don't try to guess the system, because you can't. In my area alone, one full payment on SCO pays your premium on average for 10 years. And ECO is trending almost exactly the same. Stay in the program, because when you need it and it pays out, it's going to be worth it for you. It's not here to help you make money. It's here to help make sure you're farming 10 years from now.
Yes, sir.
And that's a great point, Tim. I'll throw this out there, Dave. But in Arkansas, in 24, sold a lot of ECO products. Loss ratio in 2024 on ECO was like 4%. 25, what they do, they dropped it because they didn't think they're, going to get paid. They didn't, so they didn't take it in 25. The loss ratio this year is like 196 or something. I mean, it's way up there. So just to back up, give you some data for Tim's point, I think that's an excellent point, Tim. Thanks for bringing that up.
Excellent points. A great kind of button on the end of the discussion there. And, the only thing left is, from my standpoint, is kind of the call to action is, for folks listening, where would you guys recommend they go, for further discussion? I think Dave already said it earlier, but for further discussion, learn a little bit more about these products.
Go see your Farmers Mutual agent. I mean, they have lots of opportunities to learn from us. Our sales team, like Tim and Andrew out there, and the rest of the team do a great job of communicating and helping those agents understand how to use those tools and keep abreast. And the agents do a great job of seeking that information themselves. So, so reach out to them.
Yep, and that's obviously a blatantly obvious call to action. If you have questions, go talk to your agent. But it is really important because we spend all of our time trying to make sure agents have all the tools available, like we've kind of been alluding to throughout the discussion here. And the agents are so knowledgeable about your particular area and your individual situation. And it's just really the best place to go. I mean, you could call us and we could, give you some, high level information, but we're always going to redirect you back to your agent. So with that, guys, great discussion. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Andrew, for joining today. I think this was a very timely discussion, and it's going to continue right for the next foreseeable future. We'll keep having updates as we need to. So thanks, you guys. Really appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks. Thank you, Dave.
Yep,
Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks everybody for listening.
Yep. And there you go. That's my cue. Thanks everybody for listening. Subscribe and listen. On any of the podcast platforms. YouTube obviously is a big one. We spend a lot of time making sure that those are out there available. So stay tuned for the next FMH Insurecast, and have a great day.
You've been listening to FMH Insurecast. We appreciate you joining us today and would like to hear from you. If you have questions about today's topic or an idea to share for an upcoming podcast, you can contact us at fmhpodcast@fmh.com. Thanks for listening. This podcast is intended for information purposes only. See policy provisions, terms, and conditions for details. Products underwritten by Farmers Mutual Hail Insurance Company of Iowa and its affiliates, West Des Moines, Iowa. Farmers Mutual Hail is an equal opportunity provider.